We'll call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Nyla Fry.
Here.
Trisha Brown.
Here.
Sam Kaufman.
Here.
Kristen Runge.
Here.
Aaron Moran.
Here.
Joe Zitzelsberger.
Here.
Robert McPherson.
Here.
All right, next item on the agenda is confirmation of open meeting compliance.
I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on 8:30. The final agenda was posted in all three official posting locations on 8/28 and 8/29. And the final agenda and packet were made available online on 8/28. Two requests for the audience members, please be sure you signed in for accurate record keeping with your name, address, and municipality. And those interested in participating in public comment or public hearing, please fill out the proper form and give it to me prior to that agenda item.
All right, next item up on the agenda then is public comment. And if you have an item for the public hearing, which comes later, you might want to save that for public hearing. But do we have any public comments or anyone that's turned in a form?
And for those who are online, if you do wish to make a comment under public comment, click raise hand and we will bring you in the order that those hands go up.
And the first one we have is Mike Mahak at 206 Kingston Way, Waunakee.
Thank you, Mike. And Mike, if you don't mind, when you get to the microphone, press the button so it turns green. There we go.
Green.
Yep.
Okay,
perfect.
I don't care. Thank you for having these public comment, and thank you for serving on the board and at the pleasure of the board. I've lived in Waunakee for 28 years. I've ridden over 30,000 miles on our public streets and bike trails on my bicycle. I rode it here tonight. North of Main Street, the trails do not connect very well. Connecting from the library behind the houses to 113 would complete something that was planned years ago and would connect those trails, making it more accessible. I want to thank whoever was responsible for fixing the foot and bike bridge in Meadowbrook. There was a problem there. I had at least one flat tire on that bridge. That was fixed, but I hate to say, behind Arboretum School, the same thing is happening with that footbridge. Parents should be cursing over flat tires their kids are getting because they don't pump their tires up as much as I do. And I've had 2 flats on that bridge. The bike trail along 113 has needed work since I moved here. Whenever a street in this town is sealed or redone, bike trails ought to be done at the same time because they're going to need the same thing. But that's not why I'm here tonight. That's just some extras. The main reason I'm here is the glass on our streets. Prospect Road was paved about a month ago because I was supposed to be at the last meeting, but I had a conflict. 2 days, 3 days after it was paved was the first Monday garbage pickup there. I rode down that road. I really swept up the glass that I got off of there. I have pictures on my phone at home of all the glass at all the houses. You could tell who didn't put their recycling out that day because they had no glass because the truck didn't stop there. I ride on Prospect, Margarita, Patrick, Greenbrier, Lockmore, Pleasant Valley, Fairbrook on the north side of town. All of those have glass on them. That is a regular. I've noticed it at least a dozen times this year. The only time the glass gets cleaned up is street sweeping, which is really only a temporary fix. It's a Band-Aid. Or when the rain rains hard enough to wash it down my street on Kingston Way. I put my garbage can in 3 different positions on the last month of garbage pickup, and I have glass in 3 different spots on the road. It doesn't come out from them dumping. It comes out of the left side and front and left side and back of their trucks.
I'm afraid that was time. But we will, if you have additional information you would like to pass on to us, I would appreciate it very much if you would put it in an email and then we can make sure that we have some of these things addressed because this is really important information. Thank you very much, though.
All right. I was asked to call the disposal company. I did do that. but I don't sign their checks. I have no power. The village board is the one who I believe recently approved their contract. I trust that somebody in our village has the authority to talk to them about keeping in compliance. I actually spoke to a police officer later that day.
Again, it is time, but if you do put this in an email for
Okay.
us, I will make sure that we address it because this is really good information for us to have. I very much appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, thanks.
Next up is Liz Morose at 780 Westbridge Trail in Waunakee.
Okay, it's green. Good evening. My name's Liz Morose, live in Westbridge. Here to talk about the 113 construction project. My family's lived in Waunakee for 3 years now. We have learned to love Wisconsin. It's our first time living in a small town and we absolutely love it here and probably won't ever live in a city again. But I do feel a little silly being here about one road, but this one road is causing an awful lot of frustration. It reminds me of the Cars movie, you know, when all the cars are like, fix the road. And that's kind of how we're feeling over on that part of town. You know, I know that the 113 project has been planned for about 2 years now. And my frustration and my disappointment is just that it wasn't considered, the residents weren't considered the impact during that time. It would have been great if there was some planning early on to maybe get in touch with the DOT and ask them, hey, can we reduce the speed limit? Can we put up signage, at least on 19, to tell cars that there's going to be oncoming vehicles, you know, when you're coming up onto the village? So it's just been a source of frustration. And I don't know if Department of Transportation would have helped or not, but maybe if you weren't getting anywhere, you could have let us know and the residents could have contacted our representatives or somebody. So right now that is a really big source of frustration. It's worrisome for some of us parents of high schoolers who are going to be making that left-hand turn. I tried to find alternate routes on a map, not remembering that I'm in a small town and some of those alternate roads are gravelly and just not great either. And it's especially frustrating because we've also been fighting the Hellenbrand Road fight. We're well aware that it's Westport and Springfield and that it's not owned by Waunakee. We keep hearing that over and over and over again, but we would love for some advocating on our behalf when these developments are approved. I want someone to realize that people are going to live there and need somewhere to get into town. I don't know if they're going to have that problem over on Woodland, like if Meffert were to ever go under construction or something like that. Just the consideration for those of us who are living there that we need safe routes. Thank you. And I do love it here.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Other comments?
I have no other comment cards.
Is anyone
And
online?
to those online, I see there's a handful of participants. If you wish to speak on this topic or any other topic besides the item for public hearing tonight, which is related to, what is that? A rezone item. Click the raise hand button on Zoom now and we will bring you in to speak. Have one here. Okay, Aurora Lidebeck, and you should be able to speak now.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, my video isn't working, but I wasn't able to make it in, unfortunately. I'd also just like to speak on the 113 project, and I'll be very brief. I understand that we don't have a lot of control over the DOT and what they've been working on and the timeline, of course, and I understand that there's a lot of frustration, and I do appreciate that the village has responded to some of the social media comments. That's been really helpful to go back and see what people have been talking about on a public forum, so thank you for that. I think one of the frustrations that we have with, of course, the onset of school, now today's the first day of school, is also turning left onto 19 coming into town and having to reroute the 3 neighborhoods all the way around to come into Main Street, but then specifically turning left onto Madison at school time and then crossing, for example, all the families coming to and from Prairie, and then of course trying to cross Main Street to get over to St. John's, for example. There's just a lot of ways in and out. And this morning was a perfect example. Unfortunately, what we were worried about was there was just almost a gridlock at that intersection. This is anticipated. I know we knew that it was going to happen, but it still just adds a lot of unnecessary stress and traffic danger to the town. And I would love to see the village have some participation in traffic control or safety notification or something like that, because it just is, it's going to create more and more problems. And maybe today was just a little worse because it was the first day of school, but I'm really concerned about the volume and safety of traffic at both turning left from Hellenbrand onto 19, of course, and then coming into town, Main and Madison, and specifically trying to turn left or cross that intersection in the morning and at rush hour is just really difficult. So thank you, everybody. And I'm sorry my video is not working and that I wasn't able to make it there, but I appreciate the time to be heard.
And Aurora, could you please state your address for the record?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yep, I skipped right over that. I'm at 1100 Parkview Circle.
Thank you, Aurora. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I'm watching for other hands that might be raised on Zoom to participate in the public comments. I don't see any, Kristen.
All right, then we will close public comments and move on to the consent agenda. Do we have anything we would like pulled from the consent agenda? If not, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move approval. Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item carries. Next up is reports and announcements. First is the Sustainable Waunakee Ad Hoc Committee. We canceled that meeting this month, but it will be held as regularly scheduled in September. Library Board?
Library Board approved our social media policy and we went over our goals for Eric for the next year and our budget for 2020.
Excellent, thank you. And utilities met and we went over some results of sewer flow monitoring. We reviewed a proposal for well 6 and we recognized Shirley Nelson for 50 years of service as an employee and commission member for Waunakee Utilities. We had a cake and applauded her. And if you see Shirley, please thank her on behalf of all of us in the community. That's an outstanding record on her part. Board of Appeals.
Board of Appeals met to consider a request over on Marshall Drive to allow for a variance due to a wetland setback. It's the mirror image of the property that's directly north of that property, which was granted a variance when that project went through. So we did grant it unanimously. We put a few conditions on there that if it ever stops being a storage unit facility as proposed, that it would lose that variance. So that will be coming to Plan Commission next.
That's, your action was fine.
No, like, I'm sorry, the Plan Commission will hear about the
same,
storage
yes.
facility.
Yep.
Sorry.
My apologies.
No, I wasn't clear.
Waunakee Fire District.
Oh, okay, I can go again. The fire district met, we discussed a few items. One would be the study was discussed. There was a lot of lively discussion around that topic. I don't think it's appropriate to cover at this point, but the point is that the towns were allowed to give their opinion on it at that time. And the membership also gave their opinions and how they feel about the study. I'm hoping that we can find some common ground in some of these items as we move forward. And I hope that they will come and participate at the next village board meeting on September 15th.
16th, I'm sorry. Yeah, my bad.
Got me, Kristen.
Yeah.
That's where we'll have the open discussion. I'll stop there. The second item that we discussed is the proposal for the budget. There are some items, one item in particular is going to require a closed session at the next meeting of the fire district because there is a request to raise our only employee, the fire inspector's wages by 12% in this budget cycle, which we want to discuss in closed session. So the public is aware that will be occurring. Other items that are going up in cost, we are continuing to see some adjustment in cost with the cost of the mechanic. The village provides the mechanic. He works over in Public Works. They're still kind of feeling out how much that was going to cost them. They under budgeted last year, so they think they have the correct budget for next year on that item.
All right, thank you. Police Commission. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
We got together, interviewed candidates for an open officer position. That was it.
Excellent. Thank you. Other committees, boards, or commissions? Seeing none. All right, any other announcements? All right, we'll move on to public hearing. Next item on the agenda. This is a public hearing and discussion and action on a certified survey map to combine and rezone existing lots at 205 North Klein Drive as part of the Waunakee Police Department remodel and addition project. And Lauren, do we have you presenting this?
Yeah, usually don't.
Wait, it's coming up. Okay, so this is the CSM for the police department. It's taking 4 lots, combining them into 1 lot so that they can do the expansion without crossing lot lines. And it also brings it into a single zoning district, as those 4 existing lots currently exist within 2 different zoning districts. It was approved by Plan Commission to be rezoned to G1. However, after the meeting, staff did some more research and realized that rezoning to G1 institutional, which would make sense, they wouldn't meet the setbacks with the way the building is currently designed. And so rather than rezone them into a new zoning district and then have to immediately go and get a variance for that so that they would be in compliance, we decided that the better idea would be to go with C1 general commercial, which allows for institutions and uses, including professional offices and similar establishments. So it does fit within that C1 zoning district, and it fits in with the general zoning in that area. So we do recommend approval of the rezone and the CSM, but we do recommend that the rezone be C1 instead of the G1 that was approved by Plan Commission.
All right. Let's open the public hearing at 6:17 PM. Do you have anybody who would like to comment on this item for the public hearing?
We do have one, Maria Pat at 1000 Wexford Drive, Waunakee.
And for those online, again, another opportunity to click raise hand if you'd like to participate in the hearing.
No really need for me to talk, but I think it's a great idea. When I saw that those lots were emptying out, they were definitely a sore spot. They looked ugly. And I think that given the time of what the police department needs, it helps. And it makes sense that it be done at this time in this way for this purpose. So I'm all for it.
Thank you, Maria. Do we have anyone online?
I have no other comment cards.
All right.
And there are no hands raised.
All right, then let's close the public hearing at 6:18 PM and we will go to discussion. And Nyla, can we start with you?
I think it makes sense and I'm looking forward to following the project and seeing how it develops.
Robert.
Thank you to staff for not making another Board of Appeals meeting a reality. So glad to hear that we found a solution that doesn't require any extra steps. Just happy to see this project going along.
Tricia.
Nope, nothing. I think this makes sense to move forward.
Excellent. Joe.
I just want to confirm there's nothing statutory that says if we're going to go with C1 instead of G1, that it has to go back to Plan Commission, anything like that.
No, you can move
We're all
forward
good.
tonight.
Awesome. Okay. I think that's it then.
Great. Sam.
No questions.
Aaron.
Looks good to me. I can wait, but
I agree. Do you have a motion you would like to make?
yeah, I'll move to approve the CSM and rezoning of the property to C1 general commercial.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone who's put a lot of work into this project. All right, next item on the agenda is item number 1 under business, update and discuss with DOT representatives regarding progress and impacts of State Highway 113 project. This is on page 28 of your packet if you're following along. And so with that, Todd.
And certainly the board heard comments at a prior meeting on the topic from residents. We've also seen a good deal of comments online on some of the village's posts that we've been monitoring, and together based on what we heard at your prior meeting, what we've seen online, and a request for citizens to reach out to our comms manager and provide questions. We've assembled them into a batch and have provided them to our colleagues from the DOT. And I'm happy that tonight with us online, if you can switch to the, they'll be coming up on the camera. Cody and Alex, who are engineers on the project. Again, they've been provided those questions, and I think are best as they can prepared to provide answers and then also address questions that the board has of them. To the extent needed, Bill Frederick, our Public Works Director, is also here and is going to be able to address questions on the village's behalf regarding the construction project. So with that, Cody and Alex, can we turn it over to you? And did you want to do any sort of share screen or anything, or are you good to just jump in?
I didn't prep anything yet to share, but I was going to say, I'm free to answer any of those questions. I don't know if you want me to just take it straight off that list that you had provided me, or.
I think that'd be a good guide, Cody, unless you want to approach it a different way.
No, that's fine. I can go through that. Do you guys have a copy of them, or do you want me to repeat the question before I go through it?
I think we'll have you repeat them. Was
Yes.
the board provided the list? I don't think.
No.
Okay.
And then the public can also
And the
hear
public
and
can
record.
Yeah. Yep, that's fine. All right, I'll go introduce myself real quick. My name's Cody Camerzelt. I am the construction project manager for the State Highway project on 113 through Waunakee. I have Alex with me as well. He is the supervisor. We won't make him introduce himself, but I guess the first question we got was concerning some temporary traffic control at Hellenbrand Road and Highway 19. They mentioned like adding stop signs along 19 or providing an officer out there in the morning to kind of slow down traffic for making those left turns, and why or why not can this occur. So the department did look at all of the crash history in this location. So I looked basically all along 19 for all the intersections that connect with that subdivision. And we didn't see any crash history existing along that entire corridor. So it's believed that there is not really a safety concern with that, with any of those intersections that tie into those subdivisions. Kind of the direct point off the stop sign. Putting stop signs on free-flowing traffic, especially in rural conditions on state highways, are not deemed typically to work well. It tends to be confusing because you'll be going 55 miles an hour and then out of nowhere there's a stop sign. It's not something that's expected. You have crossroads all over 55 mile an hour, or along 55 mile an hour highways. That's an expected situation, but having a stop sign out of nowhere, especially where there hasn't been one for the last 20 years, it can cause confusion and may lead to future crashes as well.
And a lot of that does come down to like driver expectation. If you change it in the short term, we do tend to see, increased crashes.
Alex, your sound cut out.
Can you hear me now?
I could hear him on here.
Okay.
Hold on,
I
Alex.
think it might be on our end.
Give us some test.
Test. Can you hear me?
I can
Now
hear
we-
you good.
Yep, you're back. We had a internet.
hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. And just kind of piggybacking off of what Cody said, right? And with the stop sign, a lot of it comes down to like driver's expectation. There are people obviously that live in the neighborhoods, and then there are people that, maybe frequent these roads that don't. And to just throw a stop sign out there, while it may seem like a good idea, they can lead to more increases in crashes because, drivers aren't expecting, a random stop sign to now be at these locations, right? And these are things that we do look at. They're in design and in construction, and these aren't things we typically just throw out there during for temporary conditions during construction because of that concern, right? I understand the frustration, but we kind of look at it from a big picture, and there is major concern in terms of short-term increase in crashes on there and causing more headaches. Now, to kind of answer the question in terms of whether or not there could be an officer out there directing traffic, that's not something that WISDOT obviously has, right? We have state patrol out on the interstate. That would fall more on the local jurisdiction, and whether or not, the town or the village or whatever area is able to dedicate those employees to that request.
So I know, Cody, you had, I don't know, maybe 8, 9, 10 different questions. Do you want to pause at each one, or do you think they'll sort of interrelate and we'll take questions at the end?
I would say they kind of interrelate. So I'll just keep firing through them and we can open it up for discussion at the end. The next question I got was, will people be able to pass on Cop to turn left onto 113 for the short crossing north to Easy Street? So kind of just interim getting through the project, just driving from one side to the other. And ideally, we don't want traffic in there. We did start our reconstruct of the Cop Road intersection, as I'm sure a lot of people found out on Friday that have been driving through the project. We did take it down to gravel. We're going to be replacing all of that base, and we're going to be putting in new curb and gutter along that intersection. So we're going to be in that location in the next couple of weeks. It's anticipated that we're probably going to be paving, hopefully, cross our fingers, the contractor says next week, but obviously weather and things can change. Other projects can become prioritized. It's ultimately up to the contractor. They have a completion date that they have to meet. So they're anticipating to be basically in now this urban cross section. So basically from the bridge north to Easy Street, now basically until the end of September. So ideally, we do not want people in these work zones. When we do start working in these spots, I was going to say, we talk about safety. It's a huge safety thing for our crews that are out there, our construction staff that's out there. Obviously, if they're out there working and it's a closed roadway, they don't expect to have 100 cars going through there. There's maybe 30 homes that are in that one closed off section. And then we have the businesses that you're going to have tee times every 10 minutes about. The traffic coming in and out of that, we kind of prepare for, but then when you have traffic coming in from all those side streets, it makes it a lot harder for those contractors kind of plan, be efficient, and be as safe as possible. And then to add on to the safety, it's not just for us. Just think about all the dump trucks and concrete trucks that we have in there as work's getting done. There's a lot more blind spots for our crews. There's a lot more blind spots for people trying to turn around that equipment. And it's ultimately just a huge safety concern when we have people just traveling through the work zone. And that's why ultimately we proceeded with a full closure and only allowed it for people that only have access to their homes or their businesses on 113.
And just to kind of piggyback off that, right? We don't really want, like Cody said, if your only way to get to your house through there, right? There is no other choice, right? But we don't want to encourage local traffic to drive on these roads, especially when they're torn up and less than ideal driving conditions. If your car gets damaged, right, then they're going to come to our contractor and ask, hey, I got a flat tire, my oil pan got cracked, something happens, right? And then it puts us in a precarious predicament, right, where we've got a closed road, they're driving on it, who's at fault? So it just kind of helps prevent that as well. And then I guess part of the reason why the road is closed, if you look at our project, obviously we had a long bridge reconstruction and replacement. And then after that was done, we have the railroad reconstruction portion, we have the Cop Road reconstruction portion, and then we are replacing 2 decent sized culverts along Highway 19. So it's not like it's a standard mill and fill where we get in, we get out, and they're done in a couple of weeks or a couple, a month or whatnot, right? There are construction operations that do take some more time and are more invasive, and it's not an ideal driving condition to have people going in and out of there.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into another one of the questions I got with why did we go to a full closure as soon as we did, or as early as we did? One of the big things, because a lot of people just noticed the only work they'd ever see was at the bridge. Well, anybody that was trying to get through the project and ended up going north found out they couldn't get past because there were 2 culverts that we were replacing, and we had to obviously keep access to all those homes, so we could only work on one of them at a time to make sure EMS, post office, whatever could get north, south on each side of those culverts. So we did that full closure to try to prevent people from basically doing what they had been doing, and that was going around the bridge, hopping back onto 113 at whether it's Cop, whether it was Vanderleen, whatever road it may have been, and then going north through the whole project, because we were trying to prevent people from, in essence, getting stuck on 113. So that was why we put up those full barricades, is try to prevent people from doing what they had been doing through that whole bridge closure, which is what local traffic does. They find another route to make it work. And I'd say that kind of tied 2 of the questions that we got. One of them was, why did we go full closure? And if we're only working to the north and the south, can people go in and out? And that kind of continues off where we're trying to be as safe as we can for both us and the contractors. So we're working to the best that we can to make sure things are getting done as safely and as quickly as possible.
And I think it's also important to point out too that, while it may be an inconvenience, when we do close roadways, it allows our contractors to be much more efficient and have much higher production rates. If we are staging it as such that the roads are open during construction, which, is sometimes the case, a lot less likely when there's a bridge, right? When we got a bridge project, we have no choice. It does help us with our production rates, and they're much more efficient, and they can finish the job much more quickly. I know it doesn't seem like that in the moment, but I can assure you that by having it closed allows them to essentially get in and get out and not have to worry about staging it or having this or that done, right? And working around a lot of that traffic that otherwise would be coming through.
Yes. Then the next question kind of ties into that very first one about the left turn at Hellenbrand Road, and left turns. It's a blind corner at Hellenbrand and 19 with people traveling at a high rate of speed. There's been several close calls, and it's only going to get worse with back to school traffic. As I stated in that first one, we did do a crash analysis or a crash history of all the crashes in the last 4 years to verify that there isn't a crash history in these locations, and that we're not sending people to roads that have crashes that we're concerned with sending people along. So the department felt that these locations are, good areas for traffic to detour and to use. As I've kind of stated to the village, one of the big things is a lot of the comments I get are Hellenbrand. We aren't, it being a local road and all that traffic, there are multiple other ways that you can take, whether it's going farther west, whether it's going north to the town of Dane. If you're not comfortable making a left turn at those high speeds or at those locations, there are other locations that you can do them at. Hellenbrand is obviously the quickest, but if you don't feel safe and you're not comfortable making that turn, adding 5 minutes, 10 minutes to your drive should be all that it takes. Construction isn't always convenient, and sometimes it can add an hour to people's commute. This isn't that situation here, but there are projects where we detour people over an hour because there's just not a good location for us to send people. So that's one of the things I'd add about the Hellenbrand thing, is there are multiple avenues that you can take, and if you're not comfortable with the Helen Brand intersection, there are 3 or 4 other ways that you can take. Then the speed limit. Is there anything the DOT can do to address lowering the speed limit or installing temporary traffic lights at the intersection? It was previously noted that it can take the DOT up to a year to make these types of changes. If the speed limit in Helen Brand can be lowered overnight, I'm sure the DOT can do it too. So I'm not familiar with the Helen Brand speed limit change, but local municipalities can change their speed limits however they seem fit. DOT, state highways, US highways, interstates, we have regulatory things that we must meet. And basically they all have to be vetted through speed studies, speed analysis, traffic analysis before we can make any adjustments to traffic. So we also follow several manuals such as the traffic enforcement operations manual that kind of dictates where you can kind of lower speed limits. We do have a website also that talks about speed limits because we get requests very often about lowering speed limits in certain situations. And a situation like this, if we lower the speed limit, it wouldn't be something that can be patrolled. It's not something that can easily be patrolled. We need a speed declaration, and some of these things can take up to a year to do. And when we change these speed limits, especially in a rural situation where we don't have like driveways, we don't have a lot of intersections, people will just drive as fast as they feel like it should be. It's why on many, county highways, you'll see people going 60 miles an hour because that's what it feels like the speed limit should be. It doesn't necessarily mean people are going to follow that speed limit unless it's being enforced, and we can't enforce in these locations. It'd be something that'd be either done by the municipality, which I think is either the town of Springfield or can't remember the other one. I think it's outside Waunakee, but it'd probably end up having to be the county, and we don't have any jurisdiction over telling the county to be out here and patrolling that kind of stuff. It has to be requested from the municipality. So you got anything to add on to that before I hop to the next one? Okay. Another question about a temporary light to be installed at Helen Brand to allow left turns. So it kind of piggybacks off the expectation thing. So you have people traveling 55 miles an hour in a location that's always been 55 miles an hour, and then you slap up just a temporary signal. They don't typically, people don't react to them well very early, and there tends to be a lot of crashes at these because they didn't expect there to be a 55 mile an hour and then an immediate stop. When we install brand new lights, you typically see construction for several months, getting everyone prepped to get ready for that signalized intersection, to prepare people for that kind of situation. It's not an overnight snap of the fingers. Now everyone knows that it's going to be slowed down situation, and they're typically done in more urban situations. Obviously, we do have rural stoplights, but we kind of prepare those with enough lead time to get people to slow down. And
we would also,
those are done with crashes if we have crash concern.
And to piggyback off of Cody, in terms of like prepping people for a situation like that, right? Like if we were doing a signal project like that, we'd be holding PIMs and LOMs, right? Where people can come local to the project. Obviously, there are always going to be people that are commuting that may not know about that, public involvement meeting or local official meeting. But like Cody said, we would have some sort of outreach to kind of prep local people, of a change like that. And it's very difficult, and not something that we typically do on short term, specifically just because of the driver's expectation and the increase in crashes that you typically would see.
And I think I got 2 questions left. One of them was, why wasn't construction started earlier to avoid the start of school? So we had a couple factors on this kind of situation where obviously with the bridge, we are over a river and the DNR has very strict restrictions for environmental things over, I don't know if it's fish spawning windows and stuff like that, but this project by the DNR was not allowed to start until June 15th. And we also were in talks with the railroad because we have Waunakee custom homes kind of sandwiched between the railroad and the bridge. So we can't have those happen at the same time. And we've been having kind of discussions and back and forth with the railroad, and we weren't able to get kind of an answer from them early enough to get started before that June 15th window. And at that point, we just had to follow the environmental window of June 15th as soon as we can start, and the bridge is going to be the leading factor. So once the bridge was done, I believe they started mobbing in all of the railroad equipment this morning. So now we're going to be transitioning to basically working on everything north of Waunakee custom homes, doing all the railroad work. And finally, the last question we had was about just project status updates. I think I got an email about this last week, and I believe I passed it along, but I've been in talks with both Bill and Aaron with the village. We're going to start providing weekly updates now. Every Friday or near the end of the week, we'll start providing you guys a weekly update to the village. We'll either provide it to their social media. If you guys want to get added, I can start a mailing list, but I believe Waunakee has a mailing list, so it might just be better if we send it to them and they can pass everything out to their mailing list. And if anyone has questions, my name and the project engineer will be at the bottom of it, so you can feel free to contact me either via email or by call. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but we kind of held off on providing the weekly updates because with the bridge, it's a very slow moving project and there's not a whole lot to see. It's not exciting. It's not something a lot of people care to get updates on. And basically we're waiting until we officially were working in the urban area where we were going to start tearing out intersections. So I believe they might have sent that out last week. I believe we provided it to Waunakee on Friday. It might have went out today. I'm not sure, but just figured.
Yeah, I think we've got it Friday, Cody. And then just first thing this morning, our comms manager posted it on the village's Facebook page. We uploaded it to our website so they can direct link the PDF. She also did a little summary of the content within the Facebook post. So assuming we get that on Friday, it'll either be out on Friday or right away the following week.
Yeah, it might be a Monday thing because you might be getting them like you did last week where it might have been 4 o'clock on Friday, and especially holiday weekend. Yeah, so Monday might be when you guys see those, but we'll be providing weekly updates to kind of keep you guys in the loop and give an idea of what you're going to see in the next upcoming weeks, what we completed that week, and you get some nice photos of some of the fun things that are getting completed. And that's all I had for the questions that I was provided.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the information you've shared. I'm going to start off with a couple of questions of my own, if that's all right. And first of all, let me start out by saying I know construction is always hard, and I'm sure every community is frustrated with the time and the hassle and the detours and whatnot. So I appreciate you guys being here tonight. But I do have a couple of kind of pointed questions that I'm going to ask. First of all, when was the local official meeting for this project, and when was the public information meeting held?
I believe those were held in 2020.
Okay.
And that was during COVID.
Yeah, so that, unfortunately, it was held like right when COVID hit, and I think letters were sent out to people for LOM and to residents. Obviously, typically we held in-person meetings, and I think this was before WISDOT started holding virtual meetings. Obviously, as a result of COVID, virtual meetings became more prevalent and more frequent, right? So this kind of fell right when COVID happened. So letters did go out and to the residents along 113 and then to all the local officials.
Okay, so effectively there wasn't, I mean, there wasn't a meeting.
Yeah, I guess there
It's
wasn't
not
an
a,
in-person meeting, but there were letters that were sent that if you had any comments to send them to the design team. And then obviously, a response would have been sent back out.
And
Okay.
letters should have been sent out as well, basically stating that we're providing a presentation, which is what we normally provide during a public involvement meeting on our website.
Yep, they would have been on our website, and and I can understand probably the frustration with that response, right? It is,
Yeah.
I will acknowledge it's less than ideal, but I think it's just, obviously right when COVID hit, it's just extremely unfortunate timing.
Yeah. Do you ever go back and like evaluate that? Like it's been 4 years and we didn't really get to hold a meeting and maybe in 2022 we could have done something.
Yeah,
Because I think what you're hearing is the frustration of people not
Yep.
knowing, and some of the responses we have gotten from the DRTR is, oh, you should know. So
Yep, no,
that's an extraordinarily high burden. And you're hearing
Yep,
my
and
frustration.
Nope, I agree, and I, it's definitely something I'll make sure to point out, and obviously, in hindsight, I think going back out definitely would have been a good idea, right? And at that point, we were so far along in design, and I'm not trying to make excuses. I do acknowledge that, going back out and at least updating the public again would have been good. I just think with how fast things are moving and where we're at, it didn't happen for one reason or another, and it's not acceptable. And obviously, it's something that we'll make sure on future projects to make sure that enough outreach is done.
Okay. So I'm glad you're going to start sending weekly updates. One of the things, and I don't know if either of you have teenage drivers or have had teenage drivers. One of the things that parents do before school starts with your young teenage drivers is you typically 2 or 3 times at least drive the route together that they're going to drive every morning in school. And this is for safety reasons. So you can make sure they're looking left, they're looking right, that they're following the speed limit, that they're not texting their friends on the phone or doing whatever it is that we worry about teenagers doing. If those are coming out Sunday night or Monday morning, then parents who would otherwise rely on that for the next few weeks are not going to have the time to practice or update their teenagers. Can we make sure that those are sent out Friday so that parents have the weekend and other caregivers have the weekend to go over? I mean, a lot of our concern is with the teenage drivers. And I know you say that there's not been an accident from a left-hand turn at the intersections that we're concerned about. Part of that is because locally we train our children to not drive in that. So we're seeing a lot of teenagers who under normal circumstances, we would say you shouldn't be driving that road to school, you should be going through town, are now driving a route that we all acknowledge is less than optimal. It's not necessarily a great experience for a young driver. So could we get those on Friday?
I'd say, I think what we could do is, we could try and get them out by Thursday night, right? And then maybe they can be posted Friday, and then obviously it's going to be a day early and might not be 100% accurate, right? It's not going to include whatever had taken place on that Friday. But we can definitely get you to those maybe end of business Thursday. So that way, you have them and you can post them Friday morning if that seems acceptable.
Yeah, I'll share if we receive something by 11 a.m. on Friday, the village staff can commit to noon.
Okay.
Having it out on our own social media.
That'd be great. That'd be great. And I'm going to leave my questions there. I've got others, but I want to make room for everyone else to talk. So Sam, can I start with you next?
Well, I would also say that the lack of a crash history at that intersection is also the fact that typically there are not a whole lot of people turning left. The people that are using that intersection tend to be going out to the Belt Line or cutting on country roads to go to Middleton to go to work. So I think that is where some of the concern is coming from. I will note some of the residents, concerns that have been raised about, lack of transparency, regarding this project. There hasn't been any. With the control that we actually have as village government, Bill and Adam and everybody has done a great job. Certainly in my neighborhood, within a few days, I asked for some speed limit signs to be put up, and they've put up not through street signs. Now that we have almost fully staffed police department, we can do more speed enforcement, all that. So all that stuff has just been phenomenal.
And thank you for highlighting that, Sam. Yeah. Tricia.
So I guess I just want to clarify or understand with traffic controls that because it's outside, and I don't, this question is for our police or if it's for the state, but since it's outside of our jurisdiction, can we not provide traffic controls there? Is that what you were saying? At that particular intersection at Hellebrand because it's in the township?
Yeah, I can comment.
So,
You want me to go?
yeah, go for it.
Sure. So I'll comment on that. So obviously that intersection is not in the village of Waunakee. You know, I won't say that we don't use that as a travel route to go out to Westbridge in the northern part of the town, but I would be hesitant to set up a traffic enforcement area there as far as our concern from directing traffic. If there was a crash or something like that without being asked or mutual aided by another jurisdiction, I think that could be problematic. So ultimately that request would have to go through Dane County, and ultimately they should provide that, but they would have to ask us for assistance.
Thank you.
Nyla. I think that perhaps the DOT can use this as a learning experience. It sounds like to me timing was part of the issue. And communication is another part of it. And perhaps for future projects, not only going through Waunakee, but other communities, this could be a learning situation for the DOT. I hope so, because there's always room for improvement, no matter what we do. Thank you.
Yep, I would add, I was gonna say, so when we do send out these letters, we didn't get many comments, and I agree. Like Alex said, we definitely should have come out here again, but it was during COVID. It's oversight type of situation. It will be a learning experience in that point. But a good point, when we do send these letters out to people, please respond with your concerns and stuff, because it helps aid us in our design. If we hear nothing, we have to assume, well, there must not be any concerns with anything. They must have no concern that this is going to be a closed road. And I know that was in the letter. I don't know how many homes it went to off the top of my head, but when we don't hear any comments back, it does hinder us a little bit, because it's hard for us to tailor then, oh, well, we need to design something to provide access along these intersections. So just next time, if you guys do get letters from a state agency and stuff like that, please respond to them if you have any concerns. It does help us in the design process before it gets too late, like it kind of is in this situation.
Aaron?
And I guess I'd like to add, you know, we did have a pre-construction meeting, and I guess I would be curious as to if whether or not people received even those letters, right?
We didn't have
we
letters
always,
for that.
Did we not have letters for that?
Construction, we don't send out letters.
Okay. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. I guess I'm sorry I misspoke on that, but we did have a pre-construction meeting, and I'm not sure if that went out on social media or not. So
Where, if not letters, where would we look for something like that?
we would
That
post on our project website. We have a Twitter account, and then we, in most cases, we tend to work through the local municipalities to put something out on their websites as well.
Yes. This one, we did not provide a whole lot of time in advance. The contractor last second kind of provided us a schedule of when they wanted to start, which provided us about, I think, 2 days to get a meeting prepped. So it was very short notice meeting.
When we got word that that meeting was scheduled, we did our best to get it out on our social media as quick as we could. I know we heard a couple of comments like, does this good now? I can't get childcare, whatever it is for folks. That was something we faced in the village. Cody knows we shared that was a disappointment for us that we couldn't get that message out sooner.
Yeah, and we would have appreciated a much earlier notice from our contractor, and we appreciated that quick response from you guys, Todd.
Aaron?
Yeah, it's just, sorry, I guess to start, thank you, Alex and Cody, for being here and, you know, answering all the questions. I know people have been really passionate about this. I think that construction frustrates everyone sometimes, and we have quite a lot of it going on in some pretty like vital areas of town. So I think that has kind of heated up this feelings of people. And I understand that there's, a few chunks of neighborhoods that, or a few neighborhoods in a chunk of town that, this is their only connection. I just hope people can be patient with not going through the construction zone. I just really am thankful that Cody had said that and Alex, and it's just like the inconvenience of 10, 15, 20 extra minutes though was like, it's a huge safety thing for those crews. And I just think people are so frustrated about this that it's easy to just be like, I'm just gonna zip through, but I just don't think that's the appropriate reaction. And I hope that is not the case. Yeah, it's not great. There's people all over town that are dealing with construction, but it happens. And these projects from the DOT are like years in the making. And what they said, if like we don't hear from people, we can't incorporate their feedback into the design, et cetera. So we experience that on our own village projects all the time. And it's a great reminder for people to like get involved in the things in your area. I think my frustration of the frustrations is just like this project has been going on since June and there's been barrels, we've been working on the bridge and now it's inconveniencing them more. And they're like, well, what about this? And there are maybe some of these short-term things that we could have been working on even this summer if people were, working with us. And it's just like, we can't help what we don't know. And then it becomes when it's too late. So I totally understand. I'm not trying to negate anyone's frustrations. It's just like, how do we fix this in the future? And we need to hear from people about what they want when things are happening rather than way after the fact and then just pinning it on other people. Anyways, thank you all.
Thank you, Erin. Joe.
It's really hard to add really much of anything beyond what's already been said. But that being said, I'm gonna ramble for a little bit anyway. The first comment that I would have, I think maybe Sam had said something about it, but really we're dealing with 4 years worth of data on that Highway 19 section that we're looking at for crash data. 4 years that was during the pandemic, 4 years of people turning right to go to Middleton, but not turning left because they could go out Cop Road and take a right and, the path of least resistance, I guess. So I'm a little bit frustrated that we will look at the pandemic one way for some things, but we're not looking at it necessarily for the rest of the data that's there. I don't know that there's anything we can do about it. It's a frustration, I guess, that I have. Second one would be if people received the letter early on, sure, at that point, we're going to repave 113. We're going to do these different things. Okay, that's great. They're going to have to close it at some point. But 4 years ago, we didn't have any idea that the schedule would lay out in such a way that we're going to close 113 and cut off that portion of the village from being able to even take their kids to school without going through quite the mess. So it's very difficult to say, yeah, well, you should have attended meetings or you should have done whatever 4 years ago. Yeah, there wasn't enough knowledge at that time to be able to even address the concerns that are coming forward now. And the third one is actually probably, I don't know if this is for the chief or whoever, but if that piece of road is closed and it says that it will be enforced, who enforces that road closure? And what does that look like?
If you're talking about the 113 in our jurisdiction, within the village's jurisdiction, we would enforce the road closed, much like we did on Arboretum when they were working on that roadway, much like we did on Woodland Drive when they were working on that roadway. We would station people out there when available to enforce that. So obviously that's a big project that's going to go, I think, all the way to V, if I remember right.
Yep.
So there's a certain part in there that would be under the county's jurisdiction or the town of Westport, which is serviced by Dane County Sheriff.
Sure. So if people were to go Cop Road to Verleen, that's pretty clearly Waunakee jurisdiction.
Correct.
If they go Cop Road to Easy Street.
There's still a pretty good chunk of that is ours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. That's all I've got.
Thanks. Robert?
Thank you, Cody and Alex, for coming tonight. I'm sorry that you're getting a barrage of criticism. It's comes with your job, I'm sure. I wanted to ask a clarifying question. The letters that went out in 2020, you said it went to the affected households. So you're saying just the houses that have direct access to 113, is that the houses that received the letter?
Typically, yes, it's the houses adjacent to the property. We don't, we wouldn't send them citywide, right, to however many residents, right? So like, for instance, in Madison, the project on University Avenue, right, we wouldn't send it to the entire city of Madison. It'd be to the affected properties adjacent, within reason.
Okay. Because a lot of the comments that we're getting from people are from a neighborhood that's actually to the west of 113. So they would have not received the letter in the first place, which is concerning because when in 2020, that neighborhood, Westbridge, was, be kind of generous, it was maybe 0.25% built at that point. It wasn't, so you've had a lot of new people move in there after the fact. You've had people who've had turnover in those ones on 113. I have to join everyone else in stating that, that timing, it just does not work. And I get it. You guys, I'm not sure where the two of you are from, but since you're struggling to name some of the municipalities around here, I'm sure it's not from Waunakee area. So that's fine.
Yeah, sorry, I'm from Madison. I'm sorry.
All right, well, make the trip north up every once in a while and come visit us up here in Waunakee. So I mean, it kind of shows that the state maybe didn't consider that there's growing areas that were next to this road when they were doing that process. I agree with what President Runge said, the not having those meetings, that's a real killer. But I mean, even I think if we had the meetings, most of the people that are making comments are coming from an area that would not have been covered by the alerts on those letters. So I know I hear what you're saying. I'm not expecting a whole letter out to the village, but something in the maybe like a radius consideration, or at least having somebody just look and do a little bit of a smell test and say, okay, if I close this road, what neighborhoods are going to have to go somewhere else? Probably would have been a lot more helpful. Meadowbrook, which is also right there, was completely developed at this point, and well, right, but 6 miles to the right, so you could get down to Main Street. It seems like somebody really. I know you guys are going to do some root cause analysis on this, but it seems like somebody really missed an opportunity just to ask a simple question on that one as to how this would really impact it. I am going to say I find it a bit jarring to hear. Yes, there were no accidents of people turning left onto 12 over there. There was a pretty big accident just up the street there, I believe on Kingsley a few months ago. There have been accidents that have closed down the entirety of 12, I think all the way out to Springfield before, all the way from not what first, but Helen Brand. So I get what I had the same question when the roundabout was put in on 113 over at Arboretum. And we asked over there, what's it going to take for the state to do anything? Because all I hear is state highway, state highway. So I get it. You guys are more concerned with the focus of what moves the most vehicles the fastest over an area, right? Is that pretty much what your manual states you should be doing?
No, and I will say this. I understand the frustration in terms of certain intersections wanting to be prioritized, right? I mean, I will admit as a resident myself, and like I said, it's in Madison. I have my fair share of complaints over roads that need to be fixed or certain things that I would like implemented, right? And a lot of the same answers we unfortunately give to you are ones that I receive myself, right? And I can be equally as frustrated, right? But the way we look at it is we look at, and I think it's a 6-year period, not a 4. But there's a 6-year period where we look at it and I look at the amount of crashes, and we have a list of
50 crashes
the most dangerous intersections, right, or whatever you want to call it, right? And those are the ones that we prioritize, right? That's not to say that Helen Brand or the other intersections are not important, right? They are. They absolutely are. But we have a limited amount of funding that we try to do the best we can to spread it out over however many hundreds of projects that we have each year, right? And we just do not, unfortunately, have the funds to touch every single intersection in every single community along our state highways. Now, like I said, that's not to say it's not important, right? because they all are. And if I could touch every single one and do something, I would. But unfortunately, we don't have the means to do that. And, you know, I know that response is not going to make everybody happy, right? Because, you know, I feel if someone were to have a fatal accident there, right? Like, I get it. They're going to come back and say, hey, we told you so, right? And I completely understand that. But we have to do safety screenings, and we have to apply for like HISAP fundings in these situations, right? And in order to get those funding, what HISAP is,
Project
it's like Highway
program.
Safety Improvement Funds. Thank you. We have to meet certain requirements and when we apply, we find out whether or not we even meet the standards to get that funding to fix those intersections, right? So as much as I would like to, it's not as easy as, hey, we think this is a safety concern. We go to planning and they program something, right? It unfortunately, it's not that easy. And I hope that better answers why we can't, right? As much as we'd like to, we just can't. We don't have the funding.
The 113 in
And I
Arboretum
know that
was,
response doesn't make anybody happy, and I feel for it. It's unfortunate.
the 113 in Arboretum though that you're talking about, that one was HISAP funded. It was the Highway Safety Improvement Program, where we had taken that 6-year span. We had seen so many crashes that were within that were either high severity, fatality, medium severity, and basically it gets raked through the entire state of Wisconsin. And they try to balance the funding based off of how severe those crashes are to where they can put some of that money to be put into that. And those are all federally funded. So we receive money from the federal government to improve those intersections.
But infrastructure funding aside, which I understand you're competing for funds, and I get that, and you have to prioritize what you need to prioritize, is not the goal still to worry about moving the most amount of vehicles efficiently through those areas? Because that's what our previous village engineer told me when I asked about that as a citizen years back about that intersection at 113 and Arboretum. Is that not true?
I mean,
Service
if
that
we're
we're required
improving,
to achieve. And
Okay.
It's not ultimately we need to get the most cars from point A to point B, but we are trying to be as efficient and as safe as possible in those locations.
Okay, so then let me ask my bridge question then where I was trying to get to with this, and this will be my last question. So when we're talking about Hellenbrand, there, you know, the village is contemplating future developments that could occur in that area over on Hellenbrand Road. And I get it, not a state road. Hellenbrand's not your problem. But Hellenbrand is going to feed into 113, which is going to put more cars in the road onto 113. So at what point does the state go, you know what, maybe it's not appropriate that we have highway speeds 55, you know, on that section there, much like how when you get to pretty much the village's border, it drops down to 35 miles per hour when you're headed eastbound on 19. You know, like, are we gonna be going through this song and dance again with the state and WisDOT where we're saying, can we please slow down the traffic? There's developed neighborhoods over there now, or do we have to wait for 6 years of traffic accidents before we can get some action on that?
I mean, what we can do is pass your concern along with the speeds of our traffic department. Any speed changes are handled through them. One thing I can say is if you are putting in a development adjacent to a state highway, a lot of the times TIAs are needed, traffic impact analysis, right? Where maybe as a result of putting in a massive development, that developer needs to put in a roundabout, or that developer needs to put in intersection improvements, right? I know it's a lot of the times these developments are put in and then all of a sudden there's issues, and then it's, well, hey, WisDOT, we've got these issues. Can you fix them, right? And I would love to, but if you know that there's going to be a major development or a large development going in, reaching out to our planning section and letting them know and whether or not a TIA would be a good idea, that's something that could maybe help address any intersection concerns that may result of a large development going in at that area. But I will absolutely pass along your concern about speed to our traffic supervisor and chief and let them know for sure. I don't have any issues with that.
A TIA may even force them to relocate that intersection and basically put it in a new situation. If they know they're going to be putting a lot of traffic into a situation that's 600 homes or something like that, they may need to realign that entire intersection or move the crossing. Like you said, it's a different jurisdiction, so I don't specifically know per se if it would move, but sometimes those TIAs, they'll analyze all of that stuff, and it's very similar if there's ever development or a commercial building that gets put on a state highway, we require a TIA. They are required to do it, and they cannot build unless they get a TIA approved by us. Basically approving that, hey, we're going to be moving all this traffic into this location. You need to explain how you're going to get them from point A to point B.
Cody and Alex, thank you guys so much for being here tonight. We really grilled you guys. You both deserve an ice cream at this point.
Ask one more,
one more question. All
So
right.
just tying in with sort of that development talk with intersection, perhaps, Brian could weigh in here as well. We get a lot of complaints, about Helen Brand Road, and we're talking about the condition. The problem is any development that would occur there is not directly adjacent to that intersection like it was with a project on the east side of town where they did have to make improvements to Highway 18 or 19. Would the developer, assuming that would be built, could a TIA still require them to make improvements to that intersection even though it's not directly adjacent to that development?
It's wherever they're
In some cases,
so if it's going to take, let's say, Cop Road tonight to 113, they'd have to do an impact analysis of that intersection of where they're sending the traffic and where they expect it to tie in. So could be 19, could be 113. It's wherever they expect the traffic to tie in.
So what I'm hearing is that when we have development coming along, we could reach out to you early and often and talk about what that would look like in the future. So I think we know we've got a couple projects coming up on for road improvements. I think Highway 19 is somewhere in the horizon for some improvements there. What I'm taking away from our conversation is that we will make sure that if we don't hear from you, we will get in contact with you well in advance of that project so that we can make sure that some of these meetings are publicized and that you're getting the response that you need, and we're helping to generate the questions ahead of time. Again, I want to thank you for being here. I'm, really appreciative of the time you took to answer the questions. I think we've learned a little bit, and hopefully next project in Waunakee will go a little bit more smoothly because we'll be in contact a little bit more frequently early on. Thank you, guys.
thank you.
Todd, do you have anything else you wanted to add or questions?
No, I mean, staff has had a couple meetings face to face with Cody a week or two ago where we talked about a variety of angles, how we could possibly move this project along even more quickly. We talked about so this project is repaving from the bridge all the way north to V. And obviously that's a long roadway. One thing we talked about, Cody, about was, is there a way that we could compress the paving element to this project into the bridge to easy, both sides, and get that done first and then go further north. We had good dialogue on that, and there's good explanations why running asphalt one direction all the way north and then coming back all the way south is better engineering. While it may be a little slower for us to, flip the switch and be done in Waunakee proper, considering the entirety of the roadway, it's, and I'm thinking, all of a sudden I took off my Village of Waunakee hat, sorry. It's a better, bigger project outcome for the project. And Bill and I met with Cody and we understood that to be accurate. So we talked about that. I will say there's things we can look forward to. We have heard comments for years about the condition of COP and 113 intersection. Finally, that is in the near future, and obviously an improved road surface. I know we received the letters in 2020 because the DOT did hear from the village and others about what some things we'd wish for. And I think for citizens to know, the request for turning lanes onto Easy Street as you're going north then right was a request that we had heard. I think some other widening requests just this past week. We asked if there could be a last minute adjustment to add some width to the shoulder across from COP to allow maneuvers to go around stopped traffic that's turning left. And the issue there is limitations in the roadway and certainly limitations at this point in the game to make a mid-contract change. But there's also some utility issues underneath in that shoulder area too. So it's a surprisingly tricky little spot. And we did wish and ask for some relief there. But it's a limited situation for the DOT.
Thank you. I appreciate the time that you've put into this. I know you've had a lot of
Yeah,
conversations.
Bill
Thank
and
you, Bill.
Aaron as well, and the team
Yeah.
at comms.
Yeah, much appreciated. Again, thank you, Cody and Alex. Appreciate the time you took tonight to talk to us. All right.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. You too.
Bye.
All right, next item on the agenda then is discuss and take action on 2025 employee insurance benefits.
I'm gonna let Jared and Al work on that one.
That is page 29, and I believe a handout for those of us that are up here as well.
Yep, so I'm gonna start by just providing kind of a high level overview of it, and then I'll turn it over to Al from USI to get into more of the details with it. So as we do every year, we meet with our employee health committee. It's made up of staff members from every department, talk about our health insurance, go over the renewal that we get from USI, who's our broker. This year, we got a proposal from Quartz to renew with them at a premium increase of 5.32%, which is, historically speaking, very, very good if you look at recent years. So we were pretty excited about that. When you combine that with, you look at some like people on the state plan, they're looking at about an 11% increase on average. So as a point of comparison there. When you combine that with no changes to our HSA contributions from the village, which is what we're recommending, that's an aggregate increase of 3.93 to 4.05. So just call it 4% increase for the 2025 budget. So we think that's a very good, nice low increase relative to recent years. One of the things that I'm going to be turning over to Al to talk more about here in a minute is going to be a new proposal we have here, which we're calling the Family Reimbursement Account. This is a new type of incentive that we would like to offer. We've discussed as a team several years now the idea of coming up with an incentive, think of it like a payment in lieu of. So if someone waives the health insurance, give them something to do so. We can never quite come up with a plan that we thought was going to be viable in the long run and wouldn't actually really save us money or be a real benefit to the employee until USI came to us with this idea that I personally am very excited about. And again, I'll turn over to Al to explain more about how it works, but essentially helps cover the out-of-pocket costs for employees who opt out of our insurance. So it gives them an incentive to consider coverage elsewhere. Another big change that we're looking at making this year, and again, something I'll have Al explain the details about because I honestly do not know a great deal about the logistics of this, but going to a self-insured or a self-funded dental plan. This would allow us to hold our costs equal this year, so there'd be no premium increase, and instead what we would be doing is paying an administrative fee to Delta to administer our plan for our dental benefit. So nothing would change for the employees. They would see no difference with the plan, with the network, anything like that. It would just be a way for us to have more control over the reserves. We would hold the reserves instead of Delta. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and bring up our presentation and then turn over to Al to go through the presentation that USI put together and to get into more details with those items I mentioned here. So
one other thing while he's doing that, I'll share, as we've been doing for quite a few years, even before we left the state plan, as we were toying with that idea, we formed an employee team made up of staff from every department at all levels, managers and line employees, all employees participate in that to help hear the insurance issues that are ahead of us and offer perspective and guidance and engage other members of their department in conversation behind the scenes to help inform us as an employer on how the circumstances are impacting them. We did that again this round. They were involved in the discussion, and I believe are in favor of, as an employee group, what we have proposed, including the new opt-out family, what is it called? Family reimbursement program. That's something that's intriguing to the staff team as a whole.
Thank you for that. Appreciate, like to commend to Todd's point, the engagement level between the staff and the administration leadership, because why do you offer benefits? Attract and retain staff. And in the end, if we don't have that voice in the equation, we're going to miss the target. And I feel, pretty proud that as a village, we can say we're doing pretty darn well in engaging with the staff, and in addition to doing best practices while we're in the process. So they've become familiar with the terms, acronyms and whole 9 yards, but they also understand the forecasting. And to Todd's point and Jared's, we're in a pretty good situation as we stand. So the overview will be relatively high level, but in the end, some of the background, some of the renewal summary, the benchmarking, future state, and to Jared's point, talk a little specifics about the new approach in cash and lieu, as well as the self-funding and dental. Next slide. The background to that point, up until 2016, maintained with courts. Since leaving the state plan, the local plan, while the village is running pretty reasonable over the last, especially this year, unfortunately, the ETF, the local plan, and many others are not running very well. And we're starting to see a lot of high increase in trend, as noted. And the other thing that's noteworthy, the enrollment at the village on the health plan has increased significantly. And the main feedback over the years that we received, while we did see more competitive offers sometimes in the past, the staff really likes being aligned with the UW system. And that was very clear. Next slide. So the back and forth is, and the committee understands, okay, the cost of turnover, the cost of benefits, how do we balance this out? Next slide. And when we look at it as a committee, we don't just look at cost. We also look at the plan design, the payroll contribution, the overall value, and the overall communication. Next slide. Jared touched on this. You see the 5.3% on the health plans. This is a spreadsheet we look at as a committee. You see the rate changes. From a dental standpoint, we were able to keep it flat with the self-funding. And if I were to give a summary of self-funding, I feel dental insurance is a misnomer. And what I mean by that is insurance is, generally speaking, intended for catastrophic claims, whether it's property casualty, whether it's health insurance, whatever. Well, dental, there's automatically a limit in how much can be paid out each year already. So to pay additional cost for administering a stop loss to a carrier makes no sense. And for public employers throughout Dane County, throughout Wisconsin that we work with hundreds, we've moved to self-funding, because why don't we keep the reserves instead of paying it to an insurance company? And that's the bottom line, is over the years, while it may be cost neutral year by year now, we're keeping the reserves as a village as opposed to giving that. The staff members don't see any difference. It's still Delta, same providers, same coverage, they won't know any difference. It's just in the back room, we're noticing it. In the Cobra administration, you see it's, from a cost standpoint, relatively small, and the trend's relatively close to CPI. No changes from a core to HMO. Summary, switch to self-funded on the dental. The admin fee, so we pay a flat amount per employee, whether single family, we pay $6.40 to get access to the network, to have Delta answer phone calls and the whole 9 yards of administering their plan. And that would be held for several years. Family reimbursement account, the summary of what that really is. Over the years, public employers have had the idea of cash in lieu. I'd say pre-Act 10, we had a lot more public employers that had this cash in lieu, which was a way for staff members that didn't take the plan to get something for not taking it. Well, post-Act 10 became less prevalent because as staff members started contributing more and more to health insurance, there already was a disincentive. And meanwhile, if you gave them cash, what plans started seeing was adverse selection stayed on the plan. What I mean by that is, who's going to take cash and jump off the plan and go on some plan that's probably not as good? Young and healthy individuals. Well, guess who helps keep our plan more stable? So that concept didn't necessarily work, the unintended consequences. And so fast forward, the new concept, when we look at some of the other details, one of the committee review is, the concept when we went to high deductible with an HSA is, let's pay the staff, not the insurance company. So higher deductible, put more money into staff HSA contribution by the village, let them accumulate funds. Well, we don't get individual specifics, but we get categories. And when we see many individuals accumulating, you're like, hey, it's working, but there's still some individuals it's not. Well, if we, with this concept, what it's really intended to do is, hey, if your spouse has a plan and you go on their plan, we'll reimburse your claims up through your deductible. And by doing that, those unfortunate individuals that aren't accumulating HSA dollars, maybe they can come out and win by jumping on their spouse's plan. And oh, by the way, now we're not creating adverse selection. It might be a win-win. They're getting all their expenses paid for, and we're maybe not having just the young and healthy jumping off the plan. That's, I'd say, the simple concept way of summarizing it. It's not going to be, we just did this with the school district, Waunakee. And oftentimes the first year, not a lot of individuals jump at it. However, what they start doing is comparing to their spouse's plan and start realizing, dang, we have a pretty good, so that's the worst case scenario. People start appreciating how good the coverage is. Best case scenario, some individuals take advantage of it and it's a win-win for the village and for them. Right? So the information here, this just gives you a flavor of what we go through. It shows how many people are on the plan, what the rates are. We're very big into transparency. So whether it's the community, whether it's, the administration, whomever, the whole 9 yards, it's being shown. And it shows what the rates were and are. It shows the contribution percentages. It shows what's put into the HSA accounts. And to Jared's point, 4.05% on the one plan and 3.93% when you blend in the premium rates and then a flat amount of HSA. So I know the premiums went up over 5%, but you do a flat amount in the HSA, the average is out to roughly 4%. So it's working in many ways to flatten it out. And as Jared also indicated, whether it's ETF or other employers in the area, they would love to see a 4% budget increase in health insurance. Next slide. This just speaks to the contribution level, which was one of the levers we talk about. And what you see is the monthly contribution bumping up to 83 single, 207 family on the one plan, $80 and single, 200 on the other plan. One of the things we do in the committee, if you want to advance slides, we look at some of the peer comparisons. And I know I already stole the thunder of the self-funded discussion, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. We can advance. And I spoke to, over the last several years that we've had HSA, we have 105 accounts, and we have over $777,000 in the account. So the average staff member that's participating has $7,400. And you see about half and half over $5,000. So again, rather pay the staff than the insurance because that money's used or keep it for them. And this is the part that I spoke to for the family reimbursement. And, you know, if there is a negative, to be eligible, you do need to be on the plan. You know, individuals that may not be taking it now would not be eligible for this. In order for it to make any fiscal sense, that's just how it needs to be. And if they either go from family to single or family off or single off, that's another eligibility piece. But what are the benefits? Pay out of the pocket expenses in network. And who administers it? EBC. So we hire a third party, same that does our flex and things like that, or that does flex, and call it $5 per employee per month. The administrative cost is very small. I know there's some administrators out there that make it a racket and they take part of the savings, this and that. No, this is, we've created the language and we can have them administer it for inexpensively. Next slide. The note here, we don't look at benefits in a vacuum. In addition to private and public sector, we have our peer comparisons. And what's noteworthy, we have one of the higher deductibles, but then we put more in our HRA and HSA than the rest of the world. So again, it's a lot of data. I know it can be overwhelming, but the takeaway is we're different, but we're different in a good way that our staff enjoys. And part of it is, you know, their contribution levels are less than a lot of their peer comparisons on their paycheck. They're because of the higher deductible, but they also get money put into that side account. Next slide. In addition to peers that aren't on this ETF or local plan, we also look at what is on the local plan. And if you were to be a geek like me and want to look at stuff like that, you will find that the rates have gone up quite a bit and their plan designs are also being challenged. So, we're doing well as the takeaway, and you know, Quartz has had some bumps in the road with a lot of our peers in the area, but they've been a good partner for the village of Waunakee, and we feel pretty good about that. Jared, Todd, anything else I didn't get to that you wanted me to spend more time on? Or Renee? Any questions?
All right, questions on one question before I go to my fellow trustees. About how many people are eligible, would be eligible to take advantage of this? You might have said that, and I might have.
How many the family reimbursement
Yeah.
eligible? Do you mind going to the spreadsheet that has the
I don't
staff?
think
I don't know,
caught it.
Jared, if you could pull that up quicker. How many are on the plan? It was on one of the slides that showed the enrollment.
Okay. Page 7? Okay.
Oh,
Thank
here we
you.
go. We have 86 total. Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So questions, Robert, can I start with you?
Sure. I actually don't really have any questions.
All right. Nyla?
I don't have any questions either.
Joe?
As not straightforward as most benefits stuff is, this is about as straightforward as you can get. So.
Yeah, Tricia?
I just have one because I was, I benefited from the family reimbursement in a prior job, and it was a great perk if I didn't need to take the insurance. Is there a reason why a new employee that comes in who's covered by their spouse wouldn't? I guess I don't understand why that is a disadvantage or why that wouldn't be an option.
I mean, for starters, it's hard to budget, and it's easier to budget when you know the enrollment and then when you take it off. But I would look at it this way. I wouldn't rule it out permanently. It would be something, let's revisit it each year to see, does it make sense to include those individuals? I would just say the short answer right now is it's safer from a budgetary standpoint to start with just those that are enrolled.
Okay. All right. Erin.
Yeah, I guess my first question, just piggyback, or not really question, but I think it would be good for us to look at if that is something we could add in as an incentive for employees and new hires. But I know when we had looked at this a few years ago, the staff was very overwhelmingly wanting to stay with courts. And so I'm just glad we can make that work again and provide them great healthcare.
Sam.
No questions. Looks very nice.
All right. I have no further questions. So I would like to make a motion to renew the village's health insurance benefit through courts for the plan year 2025 with no changes to the plan options nor the village's HSA contributions, and to switch dental benefits to a self-insured program as presented.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Jared, for all of the work on this. Yeah. All right, next item on the agenda is discuss and take action on staff recommendation to reconsider the use of emails for board, committee, and commission volunteers. And I am not sure if this is Carla or Jared. All right. Page 33.
Thank you. Okay, so to recap here, back in February, at the February 5th, 2024 meeting, I came before the board here and asked for approval so that we could add several additional licenses to our email account so that we could get emails for all of our board, committee, and commission members. That was approved. It was a total cost of $7 per user per month. As we have been getting our Active Directory switched over and getting these accounts prepared for that, Carla and I have been talking some more about it, and we would like to reconsider that. We just think it may not be the most cost-effective solution. I think a far simpler, more straightforward solution would simply be for her and I to focus more on a robust training and orientation for board and committee members on the use of personal emails. And how we kind of came to this conclusion here is when we look at other communities, we can't really find, well, I can't find any examples in the state of Wisconsin where they provide municipally issued emails to this degree to all their volunteer committees. And with that in mind, we just feel that the cost isn't necessarily justified in that sense, and that we can have a very good and robust orientation and training that we can provide on proper use of personal emails for open meetings compliance and open records compliance. And so we're basically just asking for reconsideration to allow us to go that route, at least to start with. And anything I'm leaving out, Carla?
The only part I wanted to add in is for the sheer fact of putting this into play as well. I feel like we've run into situations where committee members also then they would forward their village emails to their personal emails as it is. So that's still not getting us away from the open record requests going to the personal. To have people manage, whether it be a second email or a third email is going to be kind of counterproductive. I believe you're not going to have people that are going to want to do that every time. So like Jared said, I think with training and putting together some explanations as to why open records is required and needed for each committee member, and maybe a consent agreement that they will comply with those open record requests and providing those records would be another option from a logistics standpoint.
I'll toss in another logistic element that was, as we started to think, when we were totally going down the route of making this happen. This wasn't, at the moment you approved it, we didn't try to strategize how to get it unapproved. And these guys have done a lot of work to try to get us there, along with our IT guy. And so we're starting to think about, okay, implementation, rolling this out, how does it work? And recognizing that there's there's 3 or 4 of our regular committees that meet at the call of the chair, or maybe once a year or a couple of times a year. And we were already planning on, if we're using the village email account, to send an email to their village email account, but also sending an email to their private email account to tell them that they got an email in their village account. Because there's no way they're watching that thing daily if they meet once or twice a year. So we're seeing these duplicated steps still involving the personal email accounts just to get them to open their village account. So there's these sort of tricks and dances that we're starting to see would be a reality of our implementation approach that made us scratch our heads and want to ask you again about it. So that's a little more of the story.
Thank you for bringing this forward. I had a couple of conversations with the team of, are people going to be opening their emails? Or even if they're on a committee that meets monthly and regularly, are people really going to be tracking this and using it, or are we going to run into issues? So I appreciate that you thought about it and kind of picked apart what we had talked about and looked at the pros and the cons and the upsides and the downsides of it. So with that, what questions do we have? Sam, can I start with you?
No, I don't have any questions. I think we can implement this approach. Certainly, we had an idea and it's been evaluated, and clearly that idea is not going to work particularly effectively.
Thank you, Sam. Aaron?
Retweet.
All right, Joe.
I don't know what that is. I don't have a Twitter account.
No, I think the ability to pivot is a fantastic thing. The only question I would have is probably one for Carla, and that is with open records requests. I assume if we're going backwards here, that potentially makes gathering that stuff a little more difficult if people are using personal accounts.
So for personal emails, we have not really had an abundance of, at least from here and in my prior job, we haven't had an abundance of requests for personal emails or even emails in general from committee members. If we do, we send out the requesting certain criteria of what we're looking for. I've never had a problem with compliance from that aspect. But we aren't moving forward, I'll say, with going where they would want us to be. And I'm not sure who we, besides maybe our attorneys and without calling him out. But again, I think we can, with onboarding committee members, we can create a document. I've seen a document in the past about compliance. I think we're gonna have more transparency with getting the records if we are able to train committee members better on what the process of open records, what is an open record, what's required of them, what is. So.
Yeah, it would seem that it would be ideal if we've got everybody on the village's system and they are actually reading their emails and everything is running through that system, because then we've got access. But I totally understand that that's an ideal that we're probably not going to hit, and it, I think, makes very good sense to.
And I think of boards such as like the Board of Review. We maybe meet, depending on, the year, maybe twice. Board of Appeals. They've maybe had more meetings than they've had in the past recently. There's a lot of committees that don't meet, and that's quite the cost. And then also if somebody forgets their password, you're kind of redoing that.
When they forget.
When it happens, but it seems like a lot more administrative nightmare to do it that way than to just request the records and train people.
Okay. And then one other question, if say there's a committee that does get a lot of volume, I'm thinking maybe sustainability even, where there's a lot of stuff going on right now. If that committee says, hey, we would like to be on here, is that still an option, or are we cutting that off?
I guess the idea that Jared and I have discussed in length is creating a Gmail account specific to, so like Create Waunakee. I know that a lot of people have different emails, like, I don't know exactly what it is, but Aaron at Create Waunakee or, Create Waunakee Aaron at Gmail or something like that. those are gonna be a way for people to not, if they don't want to use their personal email, that's a way for them to have a separate email specific to the committee that they're serving on, free of charge, and also avenue for us to get the records we need,
But managed by themselves.
but managed by themselves.
Yeah, so we would not have it open to people to request that if they wanted,
No, they would still be able to request records from that.
but they wouldn't, a committee member wouldn't be able to request an email account. the
Not
village.
specific to the village, I
Yeah,
believe.
Okay,
It's not what we're recommending. Now, if the board and a particular committee, if that's deemed appropriate for all the really right reasons, and we can confirm that the membership on that committee, not just today, but in the future, will be diligent about the use, well, then it's a different conversation for us to have together.
I ultimately, though, from a committee standpoint and managing several different committees and emails and making sure we have appropriate records for them, I would urge us to kind of stick with a policy so it's consecutive for each. I would prefer us to have one,
yeah,
training manual versus,
so we don't have a half
Two.
dozen different
yeah,
flavors
if
of
this
whatever.
situation, then this,
Okay,
that would be my one little plug.
All right,
that's it.
thank you. Trisha?
No, I'm totally fine with this. It's easy enough to create a separate Gmail account and saves us almost over $7,500 and probably Jared a lot of headaches from resetting passwords. And I think he's done mine twice already, so.
Thank you, Trisha. Robert?
All right. I do records retention at work, so I'm gonna ask an outside of the box question here. I'm not trying to antagonize anybody, so please, this is good faith question. I hate email. Email creates records that even in a private business are a pain to deal with, so we try to make it as ephemeral as possible, and I get it, this is government, so we can't make email ephemeral. Have we considered, is there anything a part of, especially with onboard or anything like that, that has the capability where we move to more of like a portal-based system where they just get like an email to their personal address that says, hey, there's a new item available for you on this service, so that it disincentivizes them to create emails where it's just the village telling them that these items are available for them to review?
That I'm not sure if we've considered. I know we've considered for like constituents, for residents to reach out to committee members instead of posting like their personal emails on the website, to have a form-based or have it sent, through the clerk. But I mean, if it was regarding myself and they didn't want to send it through me, sending it through somebody else that could then get it out to the board. So I know we've considered that route of a portal, but
Yeah,
For
so
communication?
the closest we've gotten to what you're describing that we thought would be a simple enough and manageable solution would be to essentially make like let's take the plan commission, for example. You make a plan commission at Waunakee.com email that someone sends an email to just that address, and then it redistributes 7 copies of that, one to each commissioner. The drawback to that is that you're not replying, like there's no, well, and maybe this is a good thing, is there's really no replying from that. So, because who are you replying to? You're not replying to anyone. That would be one option, potentially, but I don't know if it ultimately resolves our underlying concern about just sort of the redundancy of it all. I mean, at the end of the day, does that really gain us anything because their personal emails are still being used? So we thought that was maybe an unnecessary step. But as far as like the portal that you're describing, I can't say I'm overly familiar with so I guess, could you clarify what you mean by portal?
Yeah, so like a lot of companies have like a board portal that they use where they don't email anything to the directors of their companies. They have to log into a website. So they'll get like an email saying like, hey, these materials are now available. Much like when we get the weekly or the this board meeting from Carla, where it says, go to On Base, you can view there. It's something similar to that, so that it discourages end users from downloading keeping emails and downloading that way. But 2, it puts a centralized location. So if you need to put a contact out there, then they're going to it rather than you're creating another record of it going out to everybody. So even in the situation, I wouldn't want that situation they were explaining with the centralized email address that then propagates it out. I'd say that you'd have the email come in and then they would log in and they would be able to see, you know, a record of this email. And that way you're not creating several copies of that email. You just have the one original one. I get, and honestly, the way I see it, then it's even more transparent to the public because anything in this portal presumably would also be available for the public to review because it would be a public record at that point when you're putting it out in the portal, unless it's something obviously private, you know, like attorney-client privilege or something like that, where we don't put that on the portal anyway, it just goes to our email. So I'm just trying to think through, you know, if you had less emails total, then you wouldn't, it wouldn't matter if they have whatever email address, because then your open records request would literally just be limited to, yeah, there's 10 emails for 10 months of meetings where it's saying, go to the board portal and get your packet, and or here's an email from a constituent, we put it out there. Kind of like how I think even the school district does that a little bit with theirs, where you can see all the emails that they've received from constituents, like they put it in with their meeting packets. So just something to consider. I'm fine with you rolling this back, by the way. I'm thinking long-term future, if you want to get out of the business of email, there might be some solutions.
And my only comment to that is I think we try to do as much customer service as we can and try and help people get their information readily accessible. I think we're going to have people, if we would do something like that, that won't pay attention to those emails and take the time to log in, or will forget their login to that portal. And you'll be in the same situation, whether it be one way or the other.
I was hoping that it would be like a self-service portal where it would be like, I forgot my password, and they can go through a process
okay.
themselves. I don't
Yeah.
know what onboard and on-base can do. Like, obviously that's I'm like way outside of my,
On-base, we've been told, can do a lot. On board, they can do more and more, but I'm not sure exactly how that would work for us.
okay.
I-
Go ahead.
Waunakee, a lot of them have their own emails because sometimes it's like they're replying back to Kylie with ideas or brainstorming things or signing up for things. And my experience is maybe that's like the extent of the email. It's not a ton of things. I know Tracy always asks for our RSVP on an email for Public Works. I'm just not sure that I feel like the committees have that much emailing back and forth. That is, you know, most of the committees maybe that email couldn't just work right now.
I'm not, I mean, I'm trying to think of a solution where you have less emails in general. I get.
I guess I was just saying like the Gmail seems to work.
Well, Create
appropriately
Waunakee
enough.
is a separate.
We're a real committee, so-
No,
Well,
I wouldn't say that it wasn't a real committee. I'm saying
point.
it's a separate, it's unique.
Okay.
It's fair to say compared to other committees, because I can tell you that, like, you know, these are outside of the village, but like EMS and fire, there's almost never any emails. It's just here's your
Yeah,
agenda, here's
I
your agenda.
understand,
So
yeah.
that's all I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I just
Village
meant
board
Create Waunakee
members-
is maybe more of email intensive, and it's also still not a ton of emails. I feel like going back and forth, so.
And individual committees would still have the ability to do that. I'm just saying that in general, if we're talking about like constituent emails and communications and things like that, obviously.
We could go back to the police dropping off the packets for everyone.
Hey, utility still does that. It feels really.
There you
much.
lost
Fire and EMS, you get a nice paper. That's why I got so much paper. Here, so.
I'll just share that you guys are doing a really good job of the type of discussions we've been having to try
Yeah.
to figure out how to crack this.
All
nut.
right.
Really,
Right.
and Robert, the idea of a depository for communications is great, but what happens to the constituent who wants to email committee member B? And they want that's what they want to do. We've seen some cities who have like on their committee pages, click a button to send a message to the plan commission. It opens up a form, they do a form, click send, and it usually goes to the clerk, who then usually sent it to personal emails. So
And all I'm saying with that then is the change would be they put it on the portal and an alert goes to the personal email so that you're not putting the content in the email. there would still be an email generated because somebody still has to know it's there because as has been said repeatedly, and I wholeheartedly agree with, nobody's going to be logging in regularly to check what's on there unless they get an alert that they have something that they should check. But I work with lots of systems where all you get from that system is just an email telling you you have something to look at on this system. You need to log into it. And it's also like, it's a cybersecurity thing. It's not just a convenience factor. You have to, it reduces phishing. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
So I'm not trying to be, I will absolutely vote for this tonight. I'm just saying, long-term, I feel like maybe we could think outside the box a little bit.
There might be solutions out there that we're not familiar with, so thank
I
you
love your
for bringing that up.
creativity, Rob.
Yeah.
the-
Nyla, yeah.
Sorry.
I was saying
I was
Nyla,
gonna say
yeah.
the movement in technological advance in
Mhm.
communicating it, well, every industry, but certainly government too, that is moving light speed. So I would assume somebody somewhere is trying to grapple with this. Probably some former clerk who's now making it because they're
Yeah,
developing this product and is gonna nail it somehow.
a
But
tech broke.
Didn't I tell you that I'm out after November 3rd?
Let me know where I need to invest my money, Carla.
Okay, so my question has nothing to do with technology, since I'm not into technology. It has more to do with old-fashioned training. How many trainings do you anticipate a year? Because, I know that there's a certain time that we do appointments, but it seems like recently we've had a lot of appointments other than the usual time. So will you have time to do these trainings? And I have noticed that some of the those being on committees are on more than one committee. But that's my question. Will you have time to get this done and be able to coordinate schedules so that it can be done?
So that's something that Jared and I have talked a little bit about. Do you want to speak? Okay, so all I was going to say is that we want to develop I would like to have more of an onboarding process for committee members. I feel like they get lost once I give them their email or I send a mailing. So tomorrow morning, there'll be a mailing that'll go out for the utilities person. But once they get that letter and the onboard software is updated so everybody can see the current committees are updated, that's all we've had for communication. I feel like we can do a much better job with giving people guidance on what their responsibilities are, what the expectations are, when their meetings are going to be, when what an open records request would be and what it looks like, what information we need from them for keeping up information. And I think there's different ways to do that, whether it be old fashioned paper packet, whether it be an online option so people can do the training as it fits into their routines, because some people, a lot of volunteers work, some don't, so trying to fit the whole gamut of everybody that's on a committee, and keeping it to an administrative nightmare, not having an administrative nightmare would be great from our end, but yet still being able to ensure that we're doing a quality job of giving out the information, answering questions of new committee members, making sure the staff knows who their new committee members are. So packets get, if I'm not the one sending out the packets, to make sure that Renee knows who she needs to send out for finance, or, Village Center, who they have to send out for their different committees. We want to make sure it's as current as can be and as efficient as it can be.
I like the fact that you're saying, possible paper, possible, video, because we want to make sure that everybody in the community has opportunities, and doing it one way versus another could hinder someone from being able to apply and be part of a committee. Thank you.
I think the possibilities are endless for us to do training, depending on who needs what.
Thank you.
And I'll add, since we were talking a little about, onboarding, all that. I remember, Todd, when we had you do the sheet talking about, what we would use the extra ARPA money for. One of the things that you mentioned was a volunteer picnic. And I think, in conjunction with doing this, next year down the road, I think that would be a great idea to implement as well.
Kristen and I we just talked about that last week.
We did, yeah. Todd and I
We're
talked
looking at
about
an
that.
annual We're looking at hosting an annual event, possibly early next year. We do have some funds and some board strategic planning and other things that we think could be used wisely that way. So to celebrate our volunteers and our committee members is overdue.
Yeah. People work hard on these committees. And they deserve our appreciation and a little recognition. So Brian, I feel like you should probably warn us before we vote.
Thank you. That's exactly where I was going to ask.
The only thing that I was, you're not making any changes then. I would absolutely do village email addresses for plan commission members. That would be the one thing that I would do differently than what's in the staff recommendation from the standpoint of whether it's public records request or litigation, and I've been involved in a lot of that. I mean, I guess not a lot of public records requests for the village. We had obviously one pretty substantial litigation matter, which also resulted in a lot of discovery and a lot of public records. Most of the public records requests relate to land use. And to be perfectly blunt, plan commission members, if you want to sit on the plan commission and you do this, use your village email address and don't use your personal. And if you don't, that's a way to get you removed. But I would do it for plan commission. They meet every month. I can't think of the last time where a plan commission has not met. And so they would be checking their emails as a member routinely. That would be the one thing I would do.
Lauren, can we put that on the next plan commission meeting? A discussion of going to village emails.
Sure.
I think we still have time, maybe, question
Yeah,
mark?
I'm
Okay.
finishing up the packet tonight, so I will add it to the packet.
Cool. All right. And would we be prepared to have a quick discussion next, this coming Monday, week from tonight?
You're just wanting to get there.
Yeah, just their
Hey,
weigh in and
are
their
you guys-
plan
do you have
before
a
we
preference or-
implement it.
I mean, I would tell you,
Either to answer
Yeah.
any specific questions about it,
Yeah.
so I think we got it covered.
Okay, cool.
I think what you're doing here makes sense. Obviously, all other communities do it. I can tell you that if I was a committee member, I would absolutely want a municipal email address because I don't want anybody coming near my personal stuff. And so, I mean, I have definitely looked at a lot of public records requests that have dealt with personal email addresses for plan commission members because they had to respond. I mean, that's just the way it works.
I want to know what you do with your personal.
Yes.
Well, I would assume that everybody in this room believes their personal business is their own business and they don't want to be messing with it.
Have you seen how old his LinkedIn picture is?
Bravo. That is the only social media I am on and I was
Yeah.
forced to be on it.
Well, I still have brown hair in my LinkedIn picture, so, yeah.
In light of that discussion about plan commission,
I still think you
That
can
change
vote on
anything
it.
here?
I think
Okay.
you still can vote on, I think you can still do the recommended motion tonight. And if at the end of the day, that's more of an administrative action.
Yeah,
I would
okay.
view it.
All right. I will make the motion to direct staff to develop a training and onboarding program instead of pursuing additional village issued emails for board, committee, and commission volunteers.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That leaves time for one last motion.
I move to adjourn.
A second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain.
All right.